video I wanted to talk a little bit about winter camping and stoves, and what kind of stoves to take, what kind of fuels to use. And I'm going to start with the different types of fuels, and we'll start with alcohol. Alcohol is very light, creates a very light stove with no moving parts. And this example here is a Swedish Army. Very much like the Trangia. It's made out of brass. It holds a little bit more alcohol than the Trangia, so I like it a little bit better. It burns a little hotter, a little longer. And this is useful down to about minus 20 centigrade, that you can light this fairly easily. Doesn't need a preheat. It's very, very light, very, very handy. When it gets below minus 20, it's always nice to have a preheater. This has a little bit of fiberglass insulation in it. It's just made from a can lid. Very simple to make. You'd pour a little alcohol in there, you'd pour a little alcohol on the stove, you'd light this, and you'd put this on top, and you'd let that heat up your alcohol. And it would actually heat it up to probably the flash point where it would start itself. If not, you would light it. So that's all you need, and they can kind of nest together. So this is just a homemade preheater for a Trangia stove. Disadvantage of alcohol is that it is the lowest amount of heat or energy per weight. So you have to start taking a lot of alcohol with you. So the longer the trip, the less useful that is. As well, that's not got a lot of power. That burns for maybe 20 minutes top. And when you're doing a lot of ice, you're going to be spending a lot of time rejigging that, because although that burns fairly hot, it doesn't burn for very long, and you start running out of heat when you start trying to melt a lot of snow, because of course one of the big things you do in winter to keep hydrated is you melt snow, and that's one of the big reasons for having a stove. So light, completely reliable, a little bit weak. Fossil fuels. Everybody in North America has seen that, or the Coleman fuel. We call it white gas in Canada. So that type of stove, as shown by this 111B, has got some advantages over alcohol. Puts out a lot more heat, burns a lot hotter. This is a ½ liter tank. There's many types of newer stoves that have a detachable tank. This will keep a whole family for one day. It'll do all your melting of all your ice. This ½ liter. It will also, although people will say not to, it'll also warm you a little bit in a tent if you brought it in. The problem with that, with gas, is the white gas. Is that the white gas is very, very volatile. It vaporizes very, very quickly. It's quite dangerous for that same reason. It's actually almost an explosive fuel. If you had a little leak in this tank, fumes would start to go, and then those fumes can light. If you spill a little bit of this fuel, although it evaporates quickly, it will light at the drop of a hat. So for bringing something into a tent, I would be very hesitant of bringing a white gas stove into a tent, because it's very dangerous. On this particular design, you can occasionally have leaks of the non-return valve, and if you had little gas vapors accidentally leaking from part of your stove, they would be reignited, and you could have a real fireball on your hands. So this has got a lot of power, a lot of energy. It lights easily, but that's quite a dangerous fuel. So that's got some real advantages, but it's also quite a dangerous fuel. And that's used a lot in North America. So, I mean, it's usable, but it's got that one drawback. My favorite fuel, for that reason, is kerosene. And kerosene has as much energy as gas, but it's far less volatile. If you spill kerosene, it doesn't evaporate. In fact, it stains. It'll stay in a place forever. And an example of a kerosene stove, this one also burns gas, and many do, is the old 111. And this is a great old stove. This actually, in this model, burns hotter, although in some models it doesn't matter. The one problem with kerosene is that because it's not very volatile, it's much safer, but because it's not very volatile, it needs to be primed by another fuel. In this case, you usually bring a can of alcohol, pour that alcohol in for priming, because you need to heat this up before it'll go. You need to heat the gas up before it'll go too, but the gas, you can actually use it to prime itself. Kerosene will not prime. You could put the kerosene in that little cup, try to light that, would not burn very well. Kerosene almost needs to be under pressure and to be gasified before it will burn. So it's a little harder to light, but once it gets going, it's very, very good. You need a different type of fuel to get it going, but it burns just as hot once it's rolling. It'll burn right down to -40, both of these stoves, and it's much, much safer. If you had a little leak in this tank somehow, it probably wouldn't even light. You probably wouldn't even know that that had happened. So kerosene is probably my favorite liquid fuel for that reason. Everybody has to think about this, but one of the things that people don't like you bringing your heat into your tent. I sometimes, when it's really, really cold, find that hour or so or half an hour of a little bit of heat is very, very handy. I will bring this into my tent because it's kerosene, because it's fairly safe, because I know this stove very, very well. I know if it's working well, not working well. I know how to fix it if it's broken. And this is a very, very reliable stove. So this is probably my favorite liquid fuel. One of the issues of any liquid fuel, even an energetic liquid fuel, is on a long, long trip, you got to start bringing a lot of fuel with you. And for instance, this is the amount of fuel. That's 10 liters. A red can is 5 liters. The rest of the information is correct. Sorry about that. That would probably last you 10 days with a family. So you'd need to start bringing this kind of fuel, and that would give you a minimum. If you wanted to have a little bit of a leeway for a family, that might only last you 5 days. So for a 10-day trip, you'd have to bring twice that fuel. Starts to be heavy and a little bit bulky, but you need to have that fuel because you need to stay hydrated, and you need to get liquid water, and you get that from snow or ice. So what some people have started to do is they've started to use wood as their fuel, and they've often used little trail stoves. This is an example. I think it's called the Stratus of a trail stove, and you put your twigs in there, and you light them. You put your pot on top. The fire that acts as a little bit of a chimney, and you can actually cook on that. And in this case, you've got a 0.9 pounds, I believe, so it's about a half a kilogram, and less than half a kilogram. And you would bring that. You don't need to bring any fuel because you would use twigs. Then you got to spend time getting the twigs, and actually in the wintertime that starts to be kind of a pain to some extent, because you've got to go off trail, you've got to wander around in deep snow, you've got to be looking for wood. It's a little bit harder in the winter than it is in the summer. You can use the twigs of spruce though, and you can put the spruce twigs in there, which you can break right off the living tree, and you're not really damaging the tree. They're very, very dry, the bottom branches, and you can actually use that. It's a bit resinous, dirties up your pots, but you can actually start getting your water with wood. And the advantage of that over that 10-day trip is I'm just bringing this, and I'm not bringing this, which is with full weight, that's about 10-12 pounds. If I had 2 of them, that'd be 10-12 pounds. So the longer the trip, the more useful old-fashioned wood starts to be. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.